Welcome to episode 2 of the High School Ref Show. And I want to start out thanking all of you for the great response that we got to episode 1 and our interview with Steve Schwartz. It was very uplifting to hear positive feedback and receive so many messages of people that were excited that this show exists, that have already asked to come on the show or provided topics and feedback about the show's direction. I thank all of you for listening, for watching, for interacting with the show, and I hope that you will continue along this journey. But once again, this is episode 2. I had no idea really how this show would be taken, and it's been super uplifting and exciting to see the positive response thus far. I think it's incredibly important for officials to have a voice, right? And that's a lot of what Steve talked about last week. If you have not seen or listened to episode 1, definitely encourage you to go and do that. But it's super incredibly important for officials to have a voice. And mainly because, we're in playoff time for high school basketball, and if your algorithm on social media is anything like mine, there's very few positive comments out there in the mass media about high school officials, right? I know my feed is kind of inundated with playoff controversies, teams getting screwed out of winning a playoff game, fans screaming at refs, fans acting wild and getting thrown out, coaches getting ejected, players having fights on the floor, all of this kind of chaos. And too often in the mainstream media, right, we only hear from the voices of the players, the coaches, the fans. And this podcast, this show is about uplifting and giving a voice to the officials that are on the court or the field. And this is not the end-all, be-all solution to that problem at all. But hopefully this is one little step in the right direction to support our high school officials and just share the experiences of so many thousands of high school officials in lots of different sports across the country. So thank you again. Today, episode 2, we have my friend Scott Flickinger coming on the show. He is the current director of campus recreation at SUNY Cortland. And I think this is a great interview. We talk about the link between collegiate recreation and high school sports officials. If you're unaware, intramural sports programs across the country at the college level hire college students to officiate those games. And a lot of high school officials and college officials got their start as an intramural sports referee, as did I, and as did Flick when he shares his story on the show. So I hope you enjoy this interview. I will tell you that we did have a few audio bumps along the way, so I'm sorry about that. I am new to this show producing platform, so thank you for bearing with that. And as always, if you enjoy the show, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Would love to hear from you, and it's a free way to help amplify this show and the officials' voices even further. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right. Well, I'm here with Scott Flickinger, current director of campus recreation at SUNY Cortland. Did I get that title right?
You've got it right so far.
And I know you as Flick, and I met you back when actually I was an undergrad, reffing basketball at regional tournaments back in the day. I distinctly remember Boston University. I'm sure there were a number of others.
Oh yeah.
But I've always known you as Flick. What would you like me to call you on the podcast?
Well, you can call me anything as long as you don't call me what some of the fans call me during a game. That would be fantastic.
There you go. Well, Flick, I appreciate you joining me here today. I mentioned that, we knew each other back when I was a student and then when I became a professional in intramural sports. And, we've been lots and lots of regional basketball and flag football tournaments and conferences together over the years. And
Mm.
I wanted to bring you on. Obviously, you're a longtime high school basketball official yourself. I think you told
Yeah.
me like 27 years, right, of high
Yeah,
school basketball.
yeah, my officiating experience now gets a discount, in their insurance as well as can rent a car from Enterprise, so that's pretty big.
Yeah, for sure. And then you said I wasn't sure. You said you did a little bit of softball at some point down the road or in the past too. Is that right?
Yeah, I did softball for about 6 years, on the varsity level 2 in the area. That's when I was working in Ithaca. I'm currently in Cortland. I was on that board and did softball. Had previously done it, as a student and, picking up, it's easy to kinda translate a lot of those things because it was slow pitch, and then I translated to fast pitch, high school, ASA softball, so pretty easy pickup.
All right. So obviously, you have a lot of high school officiating experience, and you are now a campus recreation director at SUNY Cortland. I know you've
Mhm.
held a number of positions within campus rec in the past, specifically on the intramural sports side. Can you talk a little bit about your career in campus recreation and that path?
Sure, yeah. So it starts as an undergrad. I know much like you came up through in your undergrad, I did the same thing. So I did my undergrad at Ohio State University. And long story short, I got into it when I was taking a basketball officiating class. It was actually for PE credit. And the intramural coordinator at the time, his name was Mike Penner. He came into our class and said, "Hey, we're looking for officials for fall." Um, Ohio State at the time was on a quarter system, so they were we're looking for flag football officials for fall. If you have an interest, please stop by, let us know. Our interest meeting is this day, this time. And so I was taking it with a buddy, and we looked at each other. You're like, yeah, let's go see what this looks like. So went there, went through the training. I actually knew somebody from my hometown that was there, so I had a little bit of a connection going into that. Got into it, did the training, didn't know what it was gonna feel or look like. So I had my first flag football game as an undergrad, and, I loved it. It was fantastic. I got a lot of good feedback. My supervisors at the time were very, very positive. They said, "Hey, you got a talent for this. Why don't you, continue with this?" It translated into basketball in the winter and softball in the spring. And kind of from there, it just blossomed. It got me started down the road of officiating. So I got into NIRSA Championship Series tournaments a year or so later. After I left my undergrad, I started an internship at Bucknell University, but I still did the NIRSA tournament circuit as an evaluator. So I got to do these tournaments, but not as an official anymore, but somebody that evaluated the officiating. So giving feedback such as uh, call selection, mechanics, positioning. And as a new official, you know what you know. So I could give feedback at the very basic level.
Mhm.
But as I did this and again got into my officiating and continued, that really began to improve. So left Bucknell, I went to Ithaca College and worked there for about 8 years. Had my own officiating staff, so was able to work with them. I had two officials at the time go to the National NIRSA basketball tournament, which was a huge accomplishment, especially as at a small school like Ithaca College, because you got these generators, if you will, from like University of Central Florida, which is I call it NBAU because half of the NBA officials are from there now.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of large schools have that pool to pull from. I didn't have that large of a pool, but I had kids that were willing to learn and really knuckle down, and they did fantastic. So there, went to Boston University for a couple years. I actually got to host a tournament twice when I was there, and got to see it from that other end. Left there and went to Cornell University. Again, had an intramural staff. I had a ton of officials to choose from. I had 1, 2. Three officials make it to national tournament for flag football, which again is a big accomplishment for Cornell. Not really known to churn out officials, but here we are. We are able to do it. And now I'm not starting, but I'm into year 3 now of my stint here at SUNY Cortland. And through all that, I've officiated basketball. I got up to the junior college Division III level. Um, there was a lot of traveling involved with that. So I'm I'm not one to travel very far in terms of officiating. So I like to keep it local. So I said, you know what? I really enjoy the high school level. So I kept it to high school. And again, been doing high school for over 27 years now. So that's the long and the short of the story.
So take us through a little bit with the regional and the national tournaments with NIRSA. You mentioned those a lot, and obviously, both you and I have a lot of experience with those. But for those listening who don't know what those are, can you like what are the basic kind of logistics of what are those tournaments and why is it such an achievement for a student official to make it to the regionals, to the nationals, and so forth?
Yeah, sure. So, um, NIRSA, first of all, is the supporting body for higher education in terms of collegiate recreation. And NIRSA, as one of their not side projects, but as one of their profit arms, has the NIRSA Championship Series. And what they do is host regional tournaments. So, flag football in the fall. They just picked up pickleball and they're doing that now. They do tennis, they do soccer, and they do basketball as well in the spring. So for flag football and for basketball, it is all volunteer run. So volunteers from all over the nation and even from Canada and internationally come and participate in this tournament either as a volunteer or if you're a student as an official. So the officials come from the student body. So they're officials that come from all sorts of institutions. As long as they are considered a student at their university, they have an opportunity to officiate at these tournaments. And what's special about these tournaments is number one, you get a ton of individuals that are in officiating as well. One thing we've learned about in NIRSA and the collegiate recreation world is there's a lot of us that officiate and kind of practice what we preach, if you will, as an intramural director or as a sport club director, practice what we preach. So we have a lot of individuals that have the same amount of experience, if not better experience, than I've had in terms of being in officiating. A lot of those officials are also Division II, Division I college. We've had NBA officials come in before and do this. And what they do is they come in and give feedback to the students. So they officiate a game. The game sometimes is also recorded. So they'll go over the video with the officials as well and break down tape. Um, they get a lot of great live feedback. So halftime, after games, during film breakdown, there's always information being passed. And the wonderful thing I love about that too is each volunteer that's on the officials committee that's evaluating, they all have varying experiences, but they also have varying ways of how they teach it. So same message, different delivery, if you will. So there's a lot of folks that, it might not strike a chord with one person, but if another person told them the same thing, they're like, oh yeah, I liked how you explained that. And it strikes a chord with them. And what we have found is that a lot of places or a lot of officiating, for example, like the NCAA, NBA, they have tapped into and realized that there are potential officials out here that are doing this at age 18, 19, 20, and getting this kind of feedback from such from tons of individuals that have experience. So by the time they get to their junior or senior year, they're pretty well accomplished and they're pretty good officials.
Mhm.
A lot of them even start officiating high school or even do some low level college basketball or junior college basketball. And those places come out and say, wow, these are like 21, 22-year olds, and they already look like somebody has 8 to 10 years of officiating experience.
Mhm.
So I think what's really special about those tournaments, on the officiating side, is that you get some really good feedback and really good opportunities to incorporate that feedback and develop it. So by the time you maybe come back to another tournament the next year, you've already grown as an official leaps and bounds versus somebody that may not do that or may not go to camps or such. That's the big thrill of it for officials, and I think it's a thrill too for our participants and our teams because they get to work with individuals that really care about officiating and are there to develop their craft as well. So even though it's competitive, and our team still, like to talk to the officials in a way that we don't really support.
Right.
It's still really good. It's still a really good experience for the teams to see individuals that care about officiating and want to play at a high level. So, long and the short of that.
Well, and I think, you talked a lot about the feedback, and that was one of the pieces coming up in that world. And then, myself also serving as an evaluator at some of those tournaments and such that I love, because I think when you transition to the high school level, you don't get that, right? Like
No.
you know, different associations do it in different ways. And, there are a lot of associations that will have some evaluators go out, but that level of feedback is
Mhm.
just so much smaller than what we got at the intramural level, whether it was at these tournaments or,
Mhm.
for a lot of campuses, even on campus, where we're getting
Yeah.
feedback from the professionals working on campus or students that, are now veterans, meaning they've
Yes.
ref for 2 years now and they're a veteran,
Yep.
giving feedback to other officials. How do you, maybe on campus, how have you kinda cultivated that feedback, environment on campus for your campus officials?
So when I was looking at it, or when I was doing intramural sports, I don't have so much of a hand of it in it now as I did in the past, but I still see it in our programs here. It really starts with the buy-in. It starts with the buy-in from the students and the veteran students, if you will, like we just described. Congratulations, you made it through a year. You're now a veteran.
Right.
So you stayed with us for another year.
Now you're teaching. Yeah,
Yeah, now you're teaching it, get
yeah.
ready. But I think that's also a really good experience in terms of teaching because I think you have the best level of knowledge of a subject if you are required to teach it.
Mhm.
Because if you teach it incorrectly, it will be produced incorrectly. And so then that's something that you're responsible for. So putting that um, not putting it on the students, but making the students aware that, hey, you're teaching somebody how to do this. You need to make sure you know the right way to do it. And it really hits home with them. And it's like, oh, shoot, yeah, I do. So I need to really look at my rules, or I really need to ask questions about some of the more advanced interpretations of the rule. I really got to look at my mechanics. I got to get in the mirror and do my mechanics in the mirror, make it look sharp. I got to review the PowerPoint that I have built, make sure that I've got all the correct information in there.
Mhm.
So it's really good to see that student buy-in. And when you have that student buy-in, especially across an entire staff, your new officials and your veteran officials really see from the supervisors that they care. And so they work harder as well. And they appreciate the feedback. There's always a way to delivering it too. And that's what the students learn and start to develop as well, is how to pass that feedback on. So trying to be positive but direct as well. So the individual understands, or the official understands, that okay, I didn't really do a good job here in terms of positioning, or I gave the wrong mechanics, or I hesitated on something, but I learned something from it and I won't do it again, or I will work on that so I do it less, or I will work on that until I don't do it again. So I think what I see now at that level, and what I've worked with, and what I see at here at SUNY Cortland across all institutions as well, is that student buy-in. Because as a professional, we're paid to kind of do that.
Mhm.
And the students kind of realize, okay, he's earning a paycheck teaching me how to do this. students are too, but man, to hear it from a peer versus hear it from an old guy like me, sometimes really strikes that chord and realizes, oh shoot, this is something I can get into or something that I can like and feel good about it. So
Mhm. When I'm curious, so you've had a lot of officials come up through your programs that have excelled at officiating, right?
Mhm.
And they've moved on to high school or college, or they've gone to the national tournament, et cetera. So when they've gotten outside of the intramural kind of bubble, right, and they get into the high school ranks, I'm curious
Mhm.
if you followed up, or I'm just curious what feedback you get from those students when they kind of enter that new world.
first they say, wow, this is harder than intramural sports. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, it's not harder. Intramural sports is nobody's running set plays in
Mm.
intramural sports. It's just kind of a free for all if you're doing basketball and you don't know what to expect. In high school and in organized sports, organized basketball, they're running sets, they're running defenses, they're running offenses, they're strategic in calling timeouts, there's strategy involved. So in terms of the game flow, I think it's a lot cleaner and I think it's a lot easier to officiate. I think what we first hear from students that start going out into outside of intramural sports is, man, these coaches, because there's no real, we really don't designate coaches in intramural sports. And if somebody comes and pretends to be the coach that night, they're usually doing some type of caricature of a coach. So they dress up in a suit, they've got a headset on, they've got a clipboard, which they keep in their hands the whole time, which I've never seen a coach have their clipboard in their hand ever in
Yeah.
my life during live ball play. So they get that experience of, okay, I can manage players, but I really got to start managing these coaches too and figuring out. So they'll come back with, wow, this is it's kind of hard to manage coaches. What do you do? And give feedback about how to handle coaches, when to talk, when to give warnings, when to go past the warnings in terms of that. And then as they develop, it's kind of fun to get emails every now and then or get phone calls say, hey, just to let you know, I've got a championship game or I've got a playoff game in Division 3 or there's a student I've had at Ithaca College who now does D1 basketball. So to hear back from them and hear them say like, "Hey, thanks a lot for bringing me to this. When I start making those big comma checks, I'm going to send you a ticket so you can watch me play." I'm like, "Not necessary. I appreciate that, but keep your money. And
Yeah.
it's just an honor to know that you're doing this and just hear that you're doing well in it."
Yeah. I imagine too that some of the wild things that we see on intramural fields and courts,
Oh,
I can think of a time at at NC State where we had somebody in the middle of intramural flag football going on the field. We had somebody at the other end of the field that started a fire
mhm.
on the field. So we had a fire drill on an outdoor field because somebody decided to try and set a fire.
Wow.
We've had a live chicken just happened to show up in the middle of our games. So did you have, are there any wild intramural stories you can think of?
None at that level. I can't remember any times where anybody set a fire or um uh, had a live chicken there. Um, I can tell you at Cornell, when I was working at Cornell University, the intramural field there is also the emergency landing point for life flight copters if we have to transport life flight or transport students to Syracuse or to upstate for medical emergencies. We had to actually stop games twice in my career there because we had to land a helicopter there 2 separate times, and as a as a, as an administrator, you always have to have an emergency action plan for everything. We actually had an emergency action plan for whenever a helicopter landed right in the center of our field, so
Oh,
we got the heads up from, um, university police said, "Hey, you need to clear the fields. There's a
yeah,
helicopter landing here." And so to say that out loud to students, "Hey, helicopters landing, clear everyone off,"
yeah.
you always get that hesitation of, "What?"
Right,
It's like,
right.
yeah, yes, a helicopter, and they're coming quick. So get off, all of you, just get off the field. So
Yeah,
we've
duck
had
your
to,
heads.
yep. So we've had to do that, and then they stand by the side, and then they see the helicopter land, like, oh, helicopter. I'm like, yeah, the giant machine with the little twirly on the top, the rotors and that thing. That yeah, they actually have to use our field to land there. So that's a pretty silly and amazing thing that happened during intramural sports during my career. A lot of it's just little things where you're just kind of like, I can't believe that happened, and it's a one off, and you kind of forget about it the next day. I've had anything from breaking the head off of a water fountain to where it was spouting because a kid put a water bottle and wedged it in there and couldn't get it out. So this just yanked, and they yanked the head off and nobody said anything. So I've got this water spouting everywhere and I have to mitigate that.
Yeah,
There's just one thing or another. And I'm sure that, I'm forgetting more than I remember
yeah.
at this point.
Well, I do want to bring up one. I was doing some research here. Let me share this with you. I hope you can see it on your screen here. So I found the Scott Flickinger archives
Okay.
at the Ithacan, the
Um,
apparently the student newspaper, I assume, of
mhm.
Ithaca College. Can you see that?
It's-
So you have your own archive, by the way. So you must have been a big deal there. But we got a couple. I think one of your students I know did really well as a basketball official, Clark Stridesburg. I know. I think he ended up working the college level. Is that right?
he's my D1 student. Yep,
There
he
you
is
go.
working D1. Yep.
And then we've got a picture of you when you were director of intramurals there
Mhm.
at Ithaca, and I think moving over to Boston University.
Yeah.
And then the one I really want to ask about is at the bottom here.
Oh
Because
boy.
this is one I hadn't ever heard of before. Obviously, in intramural sports, we do a lot of different sports,
Mhm,
right? And some of those are, we try some new things.
mhm,
I feel like I'd heard of most of the new intramural sports out there,
mhm.
but when I saw this one, it was
Oh yeah.
pinky.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a new one for me. Can you tell us what pinky
I
ball is?
do my best to remember this. So it's a hybrid of several sports, I believe. Handball, well, as way it's handball's one. I think soccer, and I think it had a little bit of lacrosse in there as well. So it's basically taking a small pink ball, like a almost like a racquetball consistency. And again, passing it like in handball. There's goalie boxes like in soccer and lacrosse as well. It incorporates a ton of those rules. It's basically trying to score more points with this unique rule, such as with like dribbling, and it got out there. So I was like, okay, this is kind of out there, and I bet the students would love it. So we opened up signups, and we got no interest. There were no teams that did this. So I felt really bad because the intern put in so much time and effort to
Yeah,
make the rules and do all this. And we advertise it like, hey, try this new thing. We'd love to. And nobody bid on it.
yeah,
And so, I mean, things you learn too from that is, sometimes just because it's fun to you doesn't mean it's going to be understandable to somebody else. And I think what was really tough for the student populace to think about or to digest was this hybrid, this sport that they had never heard of either, and how they would do in that sport.
yeah.
So a lot of it is a lot of it is contingent upon their perceived skill level. So if they don't know if they have a skill in it, they're like, I'm not going to really try this. I don't think I have the ability to do this. So,
Right. Yeah, we tried life-size Mario Kart one year. We think we did a whole life-size series
mhm.
one year at NC State's, and I thought the life-size Mario Kart was the coolest thing ever, right? It's like
Oh,
it was like a viral trend at one point, and you build the boxes and you run around, you throw bananas like they do in the game, and turtle shells and all that. And I think we had 8 people show up, and they were all our staff, and we had a grand old time. I mean, it was a
yeah.
lot of fun, but yeah, it was the ROI on the amount of time spent trying to prepare for
Yeah.
that one was
Very
not real
memorable.
strong.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, all right. Well, Flip, why don't we do a few rapid fires here,
Okay.
and these kind of focus on your officiating. We talked a lot about intramurals,
Yeah.
um, but let's see how we do here. So I'm gonna throw you a rapid fire question. The first one is, what's the most unique thing that you keep in your officiating bag?
Ooh. This is gonna sound silly, and it's practical for me, but a dryer sheet. That is the silliest thing I keep in there. It is, because you use the same bag over and over and you clean it every now and then, but you get to like late January, February, and that bag doesn't smell the best. I've found and heard that dryer sheets absorb a lot of it, so I just tuck a dryer sheet in there, and that's the silliest thing I have in there. I try and keep it not silly. I don't have too many superstitions when it comes to officiating, so but I do care about how I smell. So just want to put that in there and make sure that, first impressions of a coach, I don't want them to get within like 3 feet of me and then kind of realize that I don't smell the best, but sometimes that's to my advantage as well. So they don't come and yell at me. They
Right.
just yell at me from afar at that
Right.
point. So
Right. Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard that one before. I like that one.
yeah.
What's the coolest location that you've officiated at?
Oh boy. So this is a while back. This is when I was still an undergraduate student. So the national flag football tournament, because that's what I got into when I first started officiating, for NIRSA was in New Orleans. And so we got to go to the Superdome and got to officiate there. So I got to officiate there, and then they gave us tickets to that bowl game there, and it was Florida State and Georgia. So we got to be on the sidelines, but we got to officiate in there. I thought that was awesome. That
That's
was like you're in there, and it's just so vast and cavernous to a point where like I don't understand how it gets so loud in here. There's too much space, and then when you realize they pack like 50,000 people in there, yeah, it gets pretty loud. So, but that was probably one of the best places, one of the most memorable ones that I've been at.
nice. I just missed the New Orleans days. I always hear about the New Orleans National Flag Football Days. It had just moved to Nashville,
That can be its own podcast, like After Dark, because
yeah,
there's a lot of things that happen
right.
there. So
Yeah, we may have to censor some of the
yeah,
information off of that one. All right, so I'm curious. Obviously, you've been a high school official for a long time. Most of that time, I believe, either Boston area or up in New York area, and upstate New York. What is the current kind of officiating landscape there at the high school level? We hear about kind of a national shortage of officials. There's lots of reasons that go into that. But one of the goals kind of this show is to talk to officials from different areas of the country and get a feel of, what that environment looks like right now in their area. So curious if you could talk about kind of upstate New York.
now what I see is, or at least experienced is, I have a lot of games where I am doing both the JV and the varsity game. And on area two, it's now a 3-person area. It's a 2-person area. So, I have a couple schools where they will do 3-person mechanics, but it's 2-person mechanics too. So not only am I doing a double header, I'm doing it with just me and another person. And so it's really hard as a basketball official to officiate with 2 people. Like there are a lot of holes in the coverage, and certain things can happen where you just don't see. And the best response you can give is just a shrug and like, well, I can't see, or it's been out of my area, and it tapped into a great space where I was on ball and off ball, that kind of thing. So, it gets really tough, and then it's a hard thing to talk to coaches about. Or like, well, why didn't you see it? I'm like, coach, I can't see that because it's 50 feet away from me. Well, you're supposed to. I'm like, well, yeah, we try and see everything, but you're only paying for 2 officials. If you paid for a third one, you'd probably get a lot better call selection out of us. Not that we're calling a better game, but we're going to see a lot more than what we see with just 2 people. But we see budgets going down too in school systems. So a big reason why we don't see a lot of 3-person is the schools just can't afford it. It's too much for them. So, um, and we're actually in playoffs now. We should be in the semifinals and finals for sectionals by now. So um, the first couple rounds in sectionals, 2-person too, which if you think about it, that's weird to do a playoff game where it's win or go home, win and you're done. And then you're going to come in and try and call the best game you possibly can with just 2 officials. So what I'm seeing right now is a lot of folks that just are not coming to the game in terms of being an official. I think the interest level is not there. I mean, I don't do it for the pay. I like it. I enjoy it without the pay to start with. The pay is always nice, but I think a lot of people also feel like with the hassle they get having to buy all the equipment, having to travel around, going to a game site where you could potentially be yelled at all night or who knows, that's just not appealing to people. And so they kind of say, nope, not for me. So we're getting a lot of people leaving faster than we can replace them. So we're at a point now where that's just the case. It's you kind of get ready to do 2 games a night, and you still got to work hard at both of those games. So that's kind of where the landscape is right now. I didn't see that so much in Boston. I was there for a couple years, and they seem to have a ton of people. But again, the area, there's a ton of people in that area. And upstate New York, not so much. So it's been a tough season, or it's been a tough few seasons, especially after COVID, with folks not wanting to be officials anymore.
Do you find that in upstate New York, are you driving long distances to games? Does that play a role? Um, I guess, what does kind of the population centers look like, and where are the high schools at?
Sure. So, um, from where I live, the furthest I've had to drive is 50 minutes. So that's kind of a threshold in terms of if I'm going for more than an hour, I hope it's for a playoff game.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes again, because we're shorthanded, you might be called on to go and officiate that game, or go and officiate. Hey, we're short officials tonight. We need you up in this area and it's an hour 15 away. It's like, all right, we got to do it. We got to do it. So, but for the most part, in my area where I'm at in the Ithaca, Cortland area, which, between Binghamton, Syracuse, I average about 25 to 30 minutes, if that. Going to different game sites, which is fine. That is totally fine and doable by me. When I was doing junior college, that was a little different because the area of coverage was the entire state. So I could be based in Ithaca and then I could go all the way to Jamestown, which is 3 hours west, or I could go to Delhi, which is 3 hours east, do a game. And then by the time I'm done and home, it's nighttime. So good example would be if I had a game in Delhi. It's not an interstate. There's no interstate to get to it, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a 3 hour drive. If I have a 1 o'clock game, I've got to be there by noon to do my hour pregame. Go do the pregame, do the game, which doesn't last as long as the car ride does. And then by the time I get home, if I start at 8 in the morning, which I will leave at 8 in the morning and get there by hopefully noon, and then leave at 2:30 and then get home by 6:30, that's an 8-hour day. That's an 8-hour day to do one game. And I think for a lot of folks, unless you really got that drive and really want to do it, that's a kind of a tough thing
Yeah.
to to really sell yourself on,
Mhm.
in terms of that. So that's tough, and they do a better job now with keeping officials closer to game sites. But back in the day, that wasn't back in the day, like I'm that old. But back when I was doing that, it was a little more difficult.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Um, well, I have one more game I'd like to play here.
okay.
So at the way that this one will work is this is called Whistle or Play On.
Okay.
So I'm gonna give you a scenario or kind of maybe a controversial topic within officiating,
Hmm.
and give it a whistle if it's something, you'd blow a whistle on and you don't think should be a part of our officiating repertoire, or play on if you would let it go. Um, so here we go. First one, chewing gum while officiating.
Play on. I have to. I have to chew gum. That is something that helps me focus. So, to be transparent, I am ADHD and it's pretty bad too, to a point where I'm medicated, but I have to be able to concentrate on the game. And part of that is to occupy my mind or occupy myself. And that's what the chewing gum does. It just helps me occupy that. Plus, I get dry mouth pretty easily. So that helps me out because I don't want to talk to a coach and not be able to open my mouth because it's sealed shut because I have no spit left. So
Yeah.
we're going to play on with that one.
Okay. How about showing up 10 minutes late to the pregame as an official?
Ooh, that's I've got to whistle that. That's important. It's important to, especially if you haven't worked together. That's important to be there and get to know each other a little bit and talk about how you're going to call a game. I've had those situations where they just come storming in and it's 10 minutes till game time. They're like, sorry, lost track of time, got out there, and it was a terrible game because we're not on the same page. We're calling different things with different we're just calling different things at that point, and the reasoning behind it, we never talked about it, so that just kinda is, so I'm gonna whistle that one. You gotta be there for your pregame.
Okay. All right. So, well, we'll go ahead and wrap up here, Flick. I greatly appreciate you joining the show, and I think to wrap up, a couple last questions. One is, so we talk about some of the challenges we face within high school officiating. You mentioned some shortages up in New York and so forth. I'm curious, if there's one thing you could fix within high school sports when it comes to the impact on officials or the experience of officials,
Mhm.
what would that be?
Man, I'm gonna try and figure out a way to word this. So, um, what I would fix is the understanding that coaches and fans have about officiating and how to officiate. And I say that because what we're seeing is because there's a shortage of officials, some of the officials that are just starting out are now being thrust into situations that they may not be ready for.
Mm.
Um, and coaches and fans kind of need to understand that with the coaching or with the officiating shortage, there's more consequences to just not enough officials. There are bringing officials in that may not be fully ready, but they got to be ready for that game tonight, and they will officiate to the best of their ability. But it may not be they may not have the readiness for that. They may not have the experience ready for that or communication skills, but they got to call that game.
Mhm.
So I would really love to change the understanding that fans and coaches have of officials and them thinking that every official is going to be a 20-year official. You're not going to get that anymore. That's going to
Yeah.
be You're gonna get a lot more younger officials, and you're gonna see a ton of them now because they've gotta be brought up in order for games to go on. So, it's either that or you just don't have as many games because you don't have as many officials. If you're gonna wait for an official to become good, you're gonna be waiting a long time.
Hmm. And it's always interesting to me when we talk about, you know, waiting for them to become good. What does good mean?
Yes.
And, there's so much subjectivity in what we do. And, you talk about even a specific call and you go to the coach, and oftentimes, that coach disagrees with the call. Well, then you ask the coach on the other side and they disagree the other way. And so, who is the ultimate
Yeah.
judge of whether a call is correct or who is good, right? There's just so
Mhm.
much subjectivity that plays into that and so
Yes.
much bias that plays into that depending on where you're at on the court.
Mm.
All right. So, and then the last question, Flick, really, we talk about some of those challenges, and I like to kind of spin this positive at the end here. You've been a high school basketball official for 27 years. You've been in campus recreation for 20 plus years and worked with student officials, a large part of that time. Through some of those challenges, why do you do it? Why do you still do it? What brings you back to high school sports officiating?
So, it's a matter of connection for me. Growing up, my dad loved basketball, and so I grew up to love basketball as well. I was never good enough to play on a varsity team or such, but could play and understood what was going on. It's really a way to connect to the sport you love, and that's what I do. I do it for the connection. I do it for the students too. Like, um, sometimes they are collateral damage when it comes to the official shortage or sportsmanship issues, because when we have those things and we have less games or we have less officials, the students are the ones that really are punished for it. So it's an opportunity to work with them. And to be fair, some of the negative aspects of a game, it's so much less than people imagine it to be. Like, you're always going to catch a little heat in the game, but never to a degree where you're going to be approached or you're going to be screamed at. Those are pretty rare occasions. It's not impossible, but it's improbable, if you will. So just keeping that in mind and realizing that the students are out there, the kids are out there to have fun. You can talk to these kids as well. They're kind of stunned when you talk to them like they're a human being, because then they realize you're a human being. It's like, yeah, we're just kind of two humans coexisting right now in this game. We just have different roles. So for me, it's to continue the love I have for basketball, and it's really to help the students and be connected to the sport.
Awesome. Well, Flick, I thank you again for coming on the show. This was awesome. I hope to bring on some more guests that have a little bit of that intramural experience, because that's obviously what I grew up in and you grew up in, and we both love that. But I also appreciate you giving your perspective at the high school level as well, up in New York. And thank you again, and we'll chat again soon, I'm sure.
All right, I'd love to thank Scott Flickinger, Flick, for coming on the show. And a big congratulations. Actually, you heard him mention NIRSA regional tournaments in the interview. And what he didn't mention is that SUNY Cortland, his school, just hosted this past weekend their very first NIRSA basketball regional championships, which is a massive undertaking. Congratulations to Flick and his team and his staff and his students at SUNY Cortland for hosting a successful event. Thank you again for listening, watching the High School Ref Show. If you would, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Would love to hear your thoughts on the link between intramural sports and high school officiating. Did you get your start that way? Do you know a lot of high school officials in your associations that started as intramural officials? Or maybe is that something that, if you're an assigner, a link that you might be able to explore to build a connection with local universities in your area to recruit young and new officials to your rosters? Leave a comment, but I will see you next time on the High School Ref Show.